How's it going, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into this video and welcome back to the channel. I know it's been quite a while since my last video. In all honesty, I have been super busy with being a first-time dad for the past year, and we have another one on the way. Just getting bills straightened out, and yeah, just life goes on, and I have, it's been a little bit since I've been able to record a video. Nevertheless, I do want to take the opportunity before we get into what I have here to my right, just thank you guys for staying with the channel even in my absence. I'm sure a bunch of you can attest to life gets a little crazy sometimes, so I'm going to try, I know it's been a few months, I'm going to try getting back into videos in my spare time. I don't want to just make BS videos for y'all of just the same old stuff like, oh, I'm busy, oh, I'm busy. Well, that gets a little old. So I want to make content that is enjoyable for you to watch. Speaking of content that is enjoyable for you to watch, I have been doing a couple side projects here and there, and I just haven't recorded any of them. But this right here, this 2006 Yamaha yfz450 actually belongs to a subscriber that has been with the channel for a while. You guys may remember him. He drove the crew cab long bed single wheel, the blue 2006-5. His name is Zack. He's been with a supporter, a diehard supporter of the channel for quite a while, and he asked me if I wouldn't mind taking a look at his four-wheeler for him. So we're going to get this thing all checked out, all cleaned up, and see what parts we need for it. And I thought, well, I haven't made any content in a while, and he had asked me if I'd make videos for him on this, so let's get into it. Alrighty guys, so this is Zack's 2006 yfz450. He picked it up for approximately 3,500 bucks. I believe I remember him telling me. It's got some things going on with it. It's not, this video isn't going to be like pointing out all the negatives and saying that, oh, it just, you may have spent too much for it. Well, quads are money pits. Any amount of toy is a money pit and stuff like that. So I'm not making this video to beat anybody up on price or anything like that. In the area that we live, which is East Tennessee, that is pretty much what you're going to spend for a used quad in this condition, and for a 450 alone in our area. So it is the 50th anniversary edition. The previous owner before him did put some graphics on it. The graphics, we're going to take those off. They're pretty well peeling up, as you can see on this back fender. That one's gone anyways. But right here by the seat, this one's peeling up. The plastics, the camera may not be doing it. Yeah, it's very dirty. A couple things that don't work on it are the headlights. The major thing is that this thing has an oil leak. So Zack has only driven this thing one time before he did an oil change. And unfortunately, the bolts for the oil filter, at least one of the bolts, is stripped out right here at the oil filter housing. So we're going to see if we can fix that for him. A couple other things that it's missing: this exhaust clamp, the head pipe is loose, and the exhaust right here, all the welds are gone. It does have a Pro Circuit TI4 titanium 4-stroke race exhaust system. The tires are obviously whooped. Whoever had this quad before him got their money's worth out of those tires. It has a e-brake block off plate, so they got rid of the e-brake. Does have pretty decent Nerf bars on it. Not sure what brand, but I know the net over on the other side is ripped, so just wanting to get some new nets anyways. And this A-arm down here is damaged, so yeah, definitely needs some love. So we're going to be tearing into this thing. The primary thing to fix, of course, is the oil leak. We're gonna get at that first, but let's go ahead and clean this thing up. She deserves it, and I don't like starting off with a dirty base. So let's go ahead and get it all cleaned up.
From my isolation, it's way too complicated. Let's stop this conversation. Let's stop this conversation. We got no relation.
Got the plastics all cleaned up. The back plastics, I think I'm gonna put just some like Armor All on them because they're pretty well faded along with the white. But they did clean up really well. Got all the dirt off them. Got the dirt off the airbox. Out of the inside of the airbox. Got to clean out that little bit of degreaser in there. And I can honestly say this is probably the cleanest this quad has been in quite a while. But before we go into some of the other things that I found wrong with this, let's get at the major issue, which is getting these two bolts off and removing the oil filter housing. And I got to see if this this is retappable. If not, then of course we're gonna have to get a new side case here. But luckily it's not the main case, it is just this side case here, I believe. So let's go ahead and get that off and see what's going on there. Okay, so here's the oil filter, and so the story that I've received from Zack is that he took it for one ride. There's a new top end on this quad. Not exactly sure who makes it or who did the work or anything like that, but so he took it for one ride and then went to go change the oil. And when putting these bolts back in down here, or right here, he stripped one out, and that's unfortunate, but he did try to heel coil one of the bolt holes, which is the very bottom bolt hole, and it wound up making a mess. So let's see if the heel coil is actually in there. I think I can see just a little bit of it here. Let's look in this bolt hole. Yeah, it does look like there's a little bit of heel coil in there. I'm gonna see what I can do. So what I'm using is an M5-10 thread chaser, and I'm just gonna go through again just to make sure. I just did that hole again, so now I'm gonna jump up here. What I'm doing is just cleaning up the threads, making sure that when you wind new bolts in there that they're not gonna strip out, or you're not gonna get a false torque reading because the junk in there is binding your actual bolt up. Maybe all right. Back this bolt out of here. Bolt in there, I got the cover just kind of sitting there, and I want to see if this will torque to 7 foot-pounds or 84 inch-pounds. So we're just gonna tighten it up and see if it'll hold torque. If it'll hold torque, or take torque rather, then I think we're gonna be okay. If not, looking like a new side case at the very least. That's awesome. Okay. Whew, it was getting awfully hairy right there. But I think with that, we're gonna be okay. So let me blend this bolt all the way out. And on these super small bolts, fellas and fellettes who watch my videos, look up any and all torque specs, whatever you're working on, because it is crucial. These little bolts don't take very much at all to get tight. You know, just take your time, and best thing to do is get a service manual. If you don't know more or less what you may be doing or anything like that, give that thing a read. I know I read an awful lot when it came to the Warrior, but I think with that we might be good to go. So next step would be seeing if I have any O-rings. So he unfortunately lost 2 O-rings, these little ones right here, so I gotta see if I have 2 more O-rings. So alright y'all, so I just retraced all the threads in the actual engine case just to make sure that there weren't going to be any problems kind of cross-threading or anything like that, just to be sure. But don't know if you can see this diagram on my phone here, but these little O-rings, I'm missing 2 of them. Nothing really more I can do with the oil filter housing until I get these new O-rings. I didn't have any, but I'll make sure to reach out to Zack. So for the time being, I'm not just gonna have that oil filter housing open, so I'm gonna put the bolts back in with the O-rings that I do have. Alright y'all, so now that we've got the oil filter housing back together for the time being, I'm still not gonna start this quad until I get those O-rings, but at least it's not gonna leak oil. I know we just did an oil change on it, but I may go ahead and do another oil change just to be safe, to make sure that it has enough in it, as well as the coolant. But I have compiled a list of the goods and the bads of this quad. Zack, I'm not making this video to beat up on your quad at all. I'm just making you aware of the issues that I found. I told you I'd go through it, note whatever I found, and there are some positives to this as well. So we're first going to go over the negatives and then hit on the positives, and then start repairing it, because the only way these quads stay alive is if guys like me and yourself out there love tinkering with ATVs, dirt bikes, snowmobiles, stuff like that. Is in order to keep them going, we got to repair them. Again, toys are money pits. My Warrior, for example, it's still broke from the last time I drove it. I haven't had the time to get around to fixing it yet, but I'm going to fix that and it'll be perfect again. So let's go over some of the things that I've found. Starting off our list would be the upper A-arm bushings. So you can kind of see, maybe not, but another thing is the alignment of this quad is off. I got the handlebar straight, but this tire seems to go out a little bit. But your upper control arms have bushings inside here, and if you can see, as I rock the tire back and forth, there's a little bit of play there. So you definitely use some upper A-arm bushings, and that's on both sides, not just one. The lowers seem to be pretty good, but the uppers are definitely needing to be replaced, at the very least greased. The next thing on the list would be that this lower control arm is dented. Whether you want to ride like that, I know this thing has been rode hard and put away wet by the last owner, but these lower control arms are definitely damaged. I would not recommend taking this thing off of a massive jump by any means, with that being that way, but so next thing on the list, the rear shock is doing something pretty funky here. Let me grab a pry bar and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you come in here, put your pry bar right on the shock, you can move it back over to the center, if I can. There we go. So I just moved it over, and then if you lift up on it, it moves back over. So rear shock is definitely doing something funky right there. I would say that possibly need a new rear shock, or if anybody else has some insight into that, please let me know. The clutch may needing to be adjusted. So right now she's in neutral, spin pretty freely, and if you put it into first gear, obviously the rear tires it puts the transmission into first gear, and that prevents it from rolling freely. Typically you'd pull the clutch and be able to move it, and it still binds up just a bit. So it's needing a little bit of adjustment, nothing super serious or anything like that. I kind of showed you guys a little bit of this, but with the plastics off, it's definitely more prevalent. The exhaust is crushed right here. It is completely dented, and then you have this crack, and the crack actually goes all the way around and actually extends up into here for the silencer. And you can push it, you can move it. Obviously that clamp is gone, and these bolts up here are loose, and it looks like somebody welded or tried to re-weld, because it rattled loose and it cut a hole in the head pipe. So it definitely needs a full exhaust. We have the negative battery terminal. So right here you can see it's broke. I'm just gonna put a new end on that, and that'll take care of that. But I pulled the battery off to get the plastics out, and noticed that, so that will need to be fixed. On the list, your foot pegs are loose. If you take it and grab it, you can see there's a lot of play in the foot peg on this side, and it's primarily due to this bolt being loose. So tighten that up. I believe the other side was okay. Yeah, it's on there. The next thing to look at would be the IMS shifter, and this is actually a positive but kind of a negative at the same time. The IMS shifter is great. I have one on the Warrior. No problems there. However, the IMS shifter is bent down severely. And there's a lot of play, and I think it's because this bolt that holds the shifter on is loose, and it looks like the very end of that shift shaft is broken. I won't know until I completely remove the shifter and go to bend it back up until I can see the end of that shift shaft. Another thing to note, it does look like this chain came loose once upon a time, and it did rub against the engine case right here. So keeping an eye on an oil leak right there would be a plus, but that's just something to note. Obviously, the rear tires, like we had said before, are in pretty poor shape. Somebody got their money's worth out of these things, especially this one over here. This one's a racing slick. It doesn't have any tread on it. Tires, that's just a constant wear item. You're going to be spending money on tires, but it's definitely worth noting. The other thing is the headlights don't work, and I'm kind of going through the wiring right here, and I pulled up a wiring diagram, and this wire is ripped and broke, and then this one that goes up to your clutch is broke. This would be for like your emergency brake, I believe. It also works in line with your neutral safety, and the wires are right there and they're just twisted together. So I'm going to clean that up, get rid of all of this extra wire, because obviously your clutch here doesn't have the e-brake on it, and it doesn't have the electricals going to it. Pretty well eliminating the neutral safety switch at this point. And I do believe this wire is tied into the neutral safety switch as well, which very well could be preventing the neutral light from coming on. It is the same color, and the wiring diagram kind of shows that they are linked together. I do believe they are the same, but may just be my color blindness messing with me. If anybody has any insight into what this wire is, I do believe it does go up here somewhere, but I'm just not positive with it. The only other thing I noticed was that it is missing a tail light, and this grab bar is broke right here. Not a super big deal. Grab bars are pretty inexpensive. This one does have these fender supports back here, but yeah, pretty well takes care of the negatives on this thing. Not terrible, of course. It's all fixable. It's nothing that can't be fixed, of course. It's not like the engine case is completely cracked and we're tearing this whole motor down or anything like that. It's just it's keeping up the maintenance. It doesn't look like the steering stem is bent at all. Handlebars maybe just a little bent, but nothing super serious. Negatives out of the way, let's get on to the positives. One of the big positives is that the Pro Taper bars are in decent shape. I mean, terrible, of course. They may just be a little bit bent, or the very end of the steering stem is bent. Wouldn't really know without taking them off, but it does have a nice set of bars. It also does have a nice set of rear bead locks. Not sure the brand on that, but the bead locks are a plus as it sits. Another good mention would be that the Nerf bars are on there. This is all stuff that eventually, being a ATV owner, you would want, so it's already there. Another thing is these big wide foot pegs definitely keeps you on the bike while you're riding. The IMS shifter is an upgrade, nevertheless. Even though it's bent, we will bend it back and tighten it up so it's nice and ready to go. Huge comeuppance on this is that it has a brand new top end, and coming over here, I don't know the name of that brand. I'm sure somebody in the comments can let me know, but it does have a brand new top end. When Zack got this quad, it did have brake-in oil in it, so new top end is a comeuppance, hardcore, so long as everybody who touched this quad did it right. So only time will tell with that, but new top end, huge plus. The Alba front bumper, it's the same one that I run on the Warrior. Again, it's just one of those things, like being an ATV owner, not wanting to keep things stock. That is a huge plus. Even though it's moderately cheap to get a new front bumper, it's just one of those things that kind of touches it up and makes it nice. So yeah, like everything, there's some goods and bads to take away from any project. However, I personally think Zack didn't do too bad. We were able to retrace those threads in the case, so that is a huge plus. We don't have to tear the motor down for him. We don't have to try to find a matching set of cases, or I'm sorry, we don't have to try and find that other outer case, if you will. You know, we're lucky. We're incredibly lucky that it was just an easy fix for him. And the stuff that's wrong with it, it's in comparison very minor. I know I didn't luck out so well with the Warrior, of course, and I kind of went big on it, but for the price range that you can get a used yfz450 in East Tennessee, this being 2023, more or less in this condition, I don't think he overspent too bad. Just fixing odds and ends, like with any ATV that you purchase, you're gonna be working on it. It's never one of those like you just buy it and ride it for the price that he paid. So we're gonna fix it up and get this YFZ right where she needs to be. So let's get after it. Another thing I forgot to mention on the bads is that this bracket right here is broke. So that won't take long to weld up by any means. It's just one of the other things that I'll have to do to it. And starting off, I believe what we're gonna do is we're gonna tidy up the wiring and the cables and stuff like that. I noticed when the plastics were on it, the main wiring harness was kind of hanging down, and that just leaves area for catastrophe. So we're just gonna go through and tidy everything up real quick.
Sure, no, it'll never be. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down.
Alright y'all, it is 1:17 in the morning and the YFZ is all back together. I'm tired, so I just finished work on Friday and then immediately started working on this thing. So she's all back together, at least the plastics are on it. We were able to knock a couple things off the list. One being that bracket. We got all new bolts all throughout. Plastics have seen better days, but at least they're all cleaned up, ready for some new graphics. But all the new bolts are in. I wanted to show you guys. These are the Mickey Mouse bolts that came out of it. They're all mix matched and everything else. Got all the wiring squared away. Tomorrow the plan is to potentially figure out what's going on with the headlights. I have an idea that it's actually the bulbs. When you turn the key and flick the headlights on, you can hear the you can hear the solenoid down there clicking, so if the solenoid's working and I'm getting power at the plugs for the headlights, the only thing that is left is the headlights. If I'm not getting power up here, then I gotta trace it back, find out where that power is behooving me. So yeah, tomorrow we'll get the headlights squared away, we'll get the shifter figured out. And until then, I'm really limited on what I can do as far as knocking out the list until parts come in for it. So Zack did tell him that he would need a bolt kit, and he did buy a spec bolt kit, which super handy. He went ahead and ordered that, so I can't really run it without pissing oil until I have gaskets, and realistically I can't really run it super long with the way the exhaust is, and taking it out on the trails is not a wise idea until we get some rear tires for it. So until then, I'm really kind of limited on what I can do with it, but I'll see you guys tomorrow for the headlights and the shifter. Alright you guys, it is the next day, or the next night rather. I've been pretty busy today, but packages came in. So the way me and Zack are doing this is I am doing the work on his quad. I'm sending him links to the parts that he's going to need for it, and he is ordering them and sending them to me. So that being said, he knew that he needed a new gasket kit for the oil filter housing, so he sent those on over. So those come in, we're going to replace them, and also he sent some grips. So the grips that are on this YFZ have been on there forever. They're super sticky, nasty. So just to freshen it up, we got some Scott grips that we are going to throw on this thing. And yeah, and once the oil filter gaskets are in place, we're going to see how she sounds finally. I have not heard this thing run. I've heard it turn over, but I have not heard it run. So we got to check for leaks at the oil filter housing, and hopefully that job is pretty well taken care of. Then we'll move on to some other stuff. For anybody looking for the gasket numbers for the oil filter, that would be it. And then you get the 3 little ones. Just gonna take a little bit of oil and just kind of smear them up here a little bit, and they go right in the oil passage holes. So I'll bring in here once I have these in place real quick. They're recessed. I mean, it's kind of hard to mix up whereabouts they go. But and then the cap gets a new O-ring as well. Okay. Got that. Let me bring y'all in here real quick. That's where your O-rings go to lock the passages. And then you have your oil filter. And then we'll put the cap on, torque everything, or get everything nice and tight. Torque spec is 7 foot-pounds. And yeah. So the only place I see any amount of oil leaking is just these crush washes in between this banjo bolt here that feed oil up to the head. So we'll have to get some new ones of those, but other than that, I'm not seeing any other oil leaks. I think the little bit of oil that was coming out of the pan was just residual. She fires right up. This thing is mean. I can't wait to get on this thing. Definitely going to be a little bit of a wake-up call from this thing. But I've ridden Raptor 700 before. I've ridden Predator 500, stuff like that. I've ridden much bigger than my Warrior, but I have never been on a yfz450, so super excited to drive this. I would really much prefer some tread on the back tires, but I may throw some tires on it just for the time being. So we're probably gonna ride it tomorrow. We'll double check everything, make sure, but I can't wait to ride this thing. Also off camera, I did put the Scott grips on. Oh, so much better than the old nasty sticky stuff that was on there. So I think. Alright y'all, it is again the next day, and the camera died last night, so that was unfortunate. But the YFZ, obviously we fixed the oil leak, and last night the next major thing I wanted to tackle was the shifter. So that's what I did, and yeah, it works a lot better now. So found that this bolt for the IMS shifter was super loose, and the shifter itself was bent, so I removed it and put it in the vise and got it bent nice and straight, so it's nice and flat and it's not hanging kind of cattywampus. And then I tightened up this bolt on the very end of the shift shaft. You can kind of see in there that it is a little broken, but it's not really affecting it just yet. If this shift shaft breaks, I'm tearing into the transmission, but right now it's nice and tight. It's not wiggling or anything like that. So we are gonna just get a baseline of how this thing runs. So let's get it started, warmed up, and put on the GoPro. Alright y'all, I'm bringing you along for a little ride on the YFZ. I've never ridden one of these. I have ridden bigger quads, but never a YFZ450. I don't want to run it too terribly long, just because the clutch does need adjustment, but these banjo bolt washers are leaking just a little bit of oil, so won't run it too terribly long. But definitely want to get a seat of the pants feel and really get on this thing. So let's do it. wowzers. That is a mean quad. That thing picks up and goes. I didn't even get into the last gear. One thing I am noticing though is that the rear end of the bike is trying to make it turn left pretty hard. You can feel it. It's almost like the rear end is just torquing up and wanting to go that way. So yeah, that was that little oil leak I was talking about with the banjo bolt up here. But man, isn't that thing fast? Hang on. That's I want one of these so bad. But y'all, I think that is going to do it for this this episode of Zack's yfz450. Really not a bad bike. I like it. I like it a lot. She's very peppy. Just a couple odds and ends to fix. There's gonna be a couple other videos on this thing, but man, isn't that thing powerful? I want one. I want one bad now. that Warrior don't hold a candle to that thing. But yeah, a couple odds and ends to kind of pick up, but we'll save that for next time. I hope y'all enjoyed watching, and if any questions, comments, concerns, please leave it down in the description box below. I know it's been a while since I've made a YouTube video, but I'm glad I'm back making them, and I'm glad y'all stuck around. So yeah, I will catch you guys in the next one, and take care.